Have you ever felt that the challenges you face are technically and humanly insurmountable? The story of Deborah begins in a landscape of utter desperation. After the death of Ehud, the people of Israel turned away from the ways of the Lord, falling into idolatry and sin. As a result of this disobedience, God allowed them to fall under the oppression of Jabin, king of Canaan, who ruled with a fearsome army led by the commander Sisera. Before we discover how God raised a woman to change the destiny of a nation, we invite you to subscribe to our channel at Bible Says It. Join our community for deep biblical studies that will strengthen your walk with God. The military advantage of the oppressors was overwhelming. Sisera possessed 900 iron chariots, a war technology that the Israelites did not have. For 20 long years, the people suffered constant looting, violence, and relentless cruelty that turned daily life into a constant struggle for survival. It was in the midst of this profound pain that the Israelites finally recognized their need for God and cried out to the Lord for deliverance. God, in His infinite mercy, heard their pleas and chose to raise an unexpected leader to carry out His plan of redemption, Deborah. She was not only a prophetess who received divine revelations but also the judge of Israel during a time when female leadership was extremely rare. Deborah became the beacon of hope and moral direction that the people needed to rise against their oppressors. Deborah, whose name signifies the diligence of a bee, shone through her wisdom and justice during a period of deep tribulation for the nation. Married to Lapidoth, her influence reached throughout the territory thanks to her recognized capacity as a prophetess. She not only spoke on behalf of God but also guided the people through direct revelations that brought order to the prevailing spiritual chaos. The book of Judges describes that she governed Israel at that time, attending to the needs of a nation that found itself under an oppressive yoke. Her command center was not a luxurious palace but nature itself, the famous palm tree of Deborah. Located in the mountain region of Ephraim, between Ramah and Bethel, this site became the epicenter of the country's theocratic justice. Israelites came there from various places with their burdens, seeking not only a legal resolution to their problems but the counsel of a woman who lived in constant harmony with heaven. She judged with such integrity and impartiality under the shade of that tree that her leadership became a pillar of absolute stability for the tribes. This role as a judge went hand in hand with an urgent spiritual mission to awaken Israel's sleeping faith. Deborah did not limit herself to settling legal disputes. She reminded the people of the critical importance of obedience to the commandments and trust in divine protection. Her position broke with the social norms of the time, proving that God can use anyone to fulfill His purposes regardless of gender. In the midst of great tribulation, Deborah's presence offered hope and direction, preparing the ground for the ultimate liberation that only the Lord could provide. In the darkest hour of oppression under King Jabin, God finally revealed a sovereign plan to restore Israel's freedom. The chosen instrument to lead this military campaign was Barak, a respected leader from the tribe of Naphtali, known for his skill in warfare and his devotion to God. Deborah, acting in her role as a prophetess, received a direct word from the Lord for this commander, so she sent messengers to summon him to her presence. The divine command was strikingly specific. Barak was to gather an army of 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them to Mount Tabor. The promise accompanying this mandate was powerful. God himself would draw Sisera and his dreaded army toward the Kishon River. There, on that designated battlefield, the Lord promised to deliver the Canaanite military force into the hands of the Israelites. Barak listened attentively, fully aware that this was a high-risk mission. The enemy army held an overwhelming technological advantage with their 900 iron chariots, a force that struck terror into any soldier of that era. However, the victory did not depend on military parity but on divine intervention. Deborah, with her unwavering faith, not only delivered the instructions but also infused Barak with the spiritual courage and determination needed to accept the challenge. It was a call to radical obedience and to trust that Israel's liberation rested in God's hands. Inspired by the prophetess's firmness, Barak began the spiritual and military preparations for a battle that would forever change the destiny of his people. Barak, despite his bravery and extensive military experience, perfectly understood the magnitude of the risk involved in this mission. The prospect of facing Sisera's powerful army, equipped with 900 iron chariots, was a formidable task that could not be approached through human tactics alone. The commander knew he would need the spiritual backing that only Deborah, as a prophetess, could provide to ensure victory. For this reason, he responded with a decisive condition: "If you come with me, I will go, but if you do not come with me, I will not go." This response did not stem from fear, but from a profound trust in Deborah's authority. Barak understood that having her by his side meant having a direct connection to the will and favor of God. He did not want to set out without the absolute certainty that the Lord was truly with them. Deborah accepted the challenge with firmness, answering, "I will go with you." However, she also issued a prophetic warning that would shift the perspective of military glory. The honor of the journey would not be for Barak, because the Lord would deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. This prophecy added a layer of mystery and intrigue to the mission. Although Barak would lead the men into combat, the ultimate heroic act would come from an unexpected place. With Deborah by his side, Barak began to mobilize the 10,000 warriors from Naphtali and Zebulun, gathering them to march toward Mount Tabor. The presence of the prophetess served not only as a symbol of divine guidance but also as a beacon of motivation for the soldiers, inspiring them to fight with a determination born only of faith. Thus, the combination of Barak's military skill and Deborah's spiritual wisdom set the stage for an epic confrontation against the Canaanite oppressor. Following Deborah's precise instructions, Barak called upon the men of the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. These 10,000 brave warriors responded to the call, recognizing that this conflict was not only for their physical freedom but for the fulfillment of the Lord's mandate. They gathered at Kadesh, a city of refuge in the territory of Naphtali. Deborah, faithful to her word, marched alongside Barak, providing the spiritual leadership and support the troops needed. Her presence significantly bolstered the morale of the soldiers, who saw her as a living sign of God's approval and divine backing. However, the movement of the Israelite forces did not go unnoticed. Heber the Kenite, who had separated from his tribe and maintained strategic ties with the Canaanites, informed Sisera that Barak had moved his forces to Mount Tabor. Upon hearing this, Sisera acted with absolute confidence in the perceived superiority of his military might. He summoned his entire army and his feared 900 iron chariots, marching from Harosheth Hagoyim toward the Kishon River. Sisera believed that his advanced technology and sheer numbers guaranteed a swift victory, unaware of the divine power and the plan already set in motion to bring him down. Meanwhile, Barak and his men occupied the strategic heights of Mount Tabor. From this vantage point, they could observe Sisera's movements and prepare for their strike. Deborah remained vigilant, constantly encouraging and strengthening both Barak and the soldiers by reminding them of God's promise of victory. Tension mounted as both armies positioned themselves for the final confrontation. Though the Israelites were vastly outmatched in weaponry and technology, they were filled with faith and determination. They knew they fought under the guidance of the Lord and that their success rested not on their own strength, but on divine intervention. The day of the decisive confrontation arrived, and the armies of Israel and Canaan stood ready to face each other in the valley near the Kishon River. Deborah, the prophetess and judge of Israel, watched the scene with determination, knowing that this was the moment the Lord would fulfill his promise to liberate his people. She turned to Barak with words of faith and fire, "Arise. For this is the day in which the Lord has delivered Sisera into your hand. Has the Lord not gone out before you?" Reassured by her certainty, Barak descended from Mount Tabor with his 10,000 men, ready to charge against the enemy. As the Israelites advanced, a miraculous divine intervention took place. The Kishon River suddenly overflowed, turning the battlefield into a deep quagmire of mud. Sisera's 900 iron chariots, the very machines that gave the Canaanites their overwhelming military advantage, became hopelessly stuck in the sludge, rendering them useless and leaving the soldiers completely vulnerable. With the enemy in total disarray, the Israelites struck with courage and force. Led by Barak's unwavering determination, the tide of the battle quickly turned in favor of Israel. The Lord routed Sisera and his entire army by the edge of the sword before Barak. Seized by panic, the Canaanite forces began to flee, but the Israelites pursued them relentlessly. Seeing that defeat was imminent, Sisera abandoned his chariot and fled on foot, seeking to hide in the chaos. Barak and his troops continued the pursuit all the way to Harosheth Hagoyim, ensuring that not a single Canaanite soldier was left alive. This spectacular victory was a clear testimony of God's power and his love for his people, marking the end of 20 years of oppression and the dawn of a new era of freedom. Sisera, the once feared commander of the Canaanite army, fled on foot, desperately seeking a safe refuge after the total annihilation of his troops at the Kishon Valley. With his army destroyed and his iron chariots useless, he arrived at the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, trusting he would find protection there due to the peace between King Jabin and the house of Heber. Jael went out to meet him with hospitality that seemed genuine, inviting him inside with the words, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not be afraid." Once inside, Jael covered him with a blanket to hide him, and when the exhausted general asked for a little water, she offered him a skin of milk. This gesture not only quenched his thirst but further reassured Sisera, who, feeling safe, asked her to stand at the door of the tent and deny his presence if anyone came looking for him. Due to extreme fatigue from the battle and his flight, the warrior quickly fell into a deep sleep. However, Jael was determined to end the threat this man represented. Acting with astonishing bravery, she took a tent peg and a hammer, quietly approaching the sleeping commander. With a firm and precise strike, she drove the peg into Sisera's temples, piercing his head through to the ground. The oppressor died instantly. In this way, Deborah's prophecy was fulfilled exactly. The glory of the ultimate victory was not for Barak, but for a woman. When Barak arrived at the scene pursuing the enemy, Jael invited him in to show him the lifeless body of Sisera. This decisive action broke Jabin's power and proved that the Lord uses unexpected instruments to deliver his people. Following the definitive defeat of Sisera and the liberation of Israel, Deborah and Barak led the people in a majestic hymn of gratitude known as the Song of Deborah. This poem, recorded in the 5th chapter of the Book of Judges, is considered one of the oldest and most significant pieces of biblical literature. The song begins with an exaltation of God, recognizing that the victory was possible because the people offered themselves willingly and the leaders accepted the challenge of following divine guidance. Deborah praised the bravery of the warriors who risked their lives for the nation's freedom, highlighting that success did not depend solely on military strength, but on the heart's willingness to obey the Lord. The song vividly recounts God's supernatural intervention on the battlefield, poetically describing how from the heavens the stars fought and how the ancient Kishon River swept away the enemy and their iron chariots. It also gives a special place of honor to Jael, calling her blessed among women for her courage in eliminating the oppressor, thus fulfilling the prophecy that a woman would receive the final glory. The poem even includes a moving reflection on Sisera's mother, who waited in vain for her son's return, symbolizing the divine judgment that falls on those who oppress God's people. The account concludes with a powerful declaration of hope. So let all your enemies perish, O Lord, but let those who love him be like the sun when it comes out in its strength. This victory marked the beginning of a new era of peace for Israel. If this study on Deborah's leadership and faith has touched your life, we invite you to subscribe to our channel at Bible Says It. Here we explore the depths of Scripture together to find guidance in the stories of those who preceded us. Don't forget to like, comment with your reflections, and share this video so others can find light for their modern journey. We'll see you in the next video on It Bible Says It.